thanks for tuning in today to Front Porch Conversations. Today we're having our conversation at the Harmony Center. And I want to introduce you to our guests, Mike and Jan Cuddy. Mike and Jan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure to be here.
And I look forward to our viewers getting to know more about you. So who would like to tell us where they were born? Who would like to tell us first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I was born in Beech Grove, Indiana, and lived all of my life in Indiana up until the time we got married. My dad was a basketball coach, so I got to see almost the whole state because we started at the north and ended in the south.
And I understand being from basketball country, that's kind of like a way of life there.
It is. Friday and Saturday nights, it's like everybody in the town, you roll up the sidewalks and you end up in the high school gymnasium. So it was a great time to grow up in the 60s watching everything that went on.
I bet.
Jan? I was born in Orlando. My parents moved there when my older sister was a baby. I think it was 1947. My grandmother was very ill. They lived in Kingsport, Tennessee, and her asthma was so bad, the doctor said, you've got to find a better climate. And my grandfather had been to Florida, and he loved it, so they ended up moving there. So I was born and raised there, and I have two sisters, my older sister and my younger sister.
Well, Jan, you're a part of an elite group of the people we've done Front Porch Conversations with, which is over 70 now. I think there are only 6 native Floridians, and I'm one of them.
Yay!
So with that, let's move on to learning more about you.
Okay. Well, like I said, my dad was a basketball coach in Indiana, and so we moved all over the place. But the final years was in a little small town north of Louisville, Kentucky called Salem, and got a wonderful education there. Jan comments all the time on how do you know these things? Well, it was just kind of a neat thing there. I went to Purdue in '67 for aeronautical engineering, and then that crashed, the whole market with that crashed, and I changed over to mathematics and computer science and knocked around for a while, and then that didn't work out real well. So came home, got into auto mechanics and did that for several years, and then decided I needed to go on and become a teacher. And I went to Cincinnati, and we met at a Bible college there, and have taught almost ever since.
Among your most favorite memories of childhood, are they basketball times or other things you'd add as well?
All the gymnasiums. If you can imagine Indiana, one of the thrills that I had was, if you've ever seen the movie Hoosiers, my high school team got to go and play Milan, Indiana, which is basically what Hoosiers was based off of. And when you walked in the gymnasium, they had they looked bigger than life, but life-size black and white photos of the teams from Milan, Indiana, the one that won the state tournament and the one that was the runner-up. And that was a special thrill for me.
I bet.
And there was one other incident that I had. We had a racetrack in Salem, Indiana, and A.J. Foyt came there, and a group of us got to push his race car out onto the track. And then after he had won the feature and won everything, we had to push his race car back onto the trailer, and he gave each of us a $10 bill.
Woohoo! But probably the memory of meeting him was more valuable than the $10 bill.
Right.
And you drag race too.
Oh, yeah. All over southern Indiana.
I asked his mother how she dealt with him drag racing. She said it was easy. She never knew he did it. Tell what you did. You would go to church. And
Oh, yeah. We'd go to early service at church, like the 7:30 service, which would give us enough time by 8:30 to leave and go to the track. And then we'd get the car prepped, and by 10:30 we'd have our first runs through and have our time trials done. Then we could put the car all back together because, as we used to say, you run what you brung. Then we'd get back home just in time so that we could go to the evening service. So
you didn't get caught much, huh?
No.
Jan, what about your growing up years?
I think my favorite memory of growing up was family. My mother had 6 siblings, and they all moved down together, and so I grew up with my aunts and uncles and cousins, but we also went to the same church. And I love that example of how church should be. You shouldn't just feel welcome at church, you should feel like family. And when I was growing up, I thought I was related to everybody. And so I was truly raised by a village. My whole social life was church. I loved church, and it was a big part of my life. And family, definitely. If we weren't doing something with a Sunday school group or youth group, it was family. We would do camping, and one of my favorites was roller skating. I couldn't roller skate today if my life depended on it, but go-karts and going to swimming and beautiful lakes through Orlando and Springs in the other areas. So that's my fondest memory is family, growing up with family.
And when you were growing up in Orlando, it was not a big city then, was it?
No, Orlando was called the City Beautiful. It probably still is, but it really was just lakes everywhere. I don't know if this was correct or not, but my daddy loved lakes and the beach. So we were all, and he was a block mason. So he worked hard during the week, and he'd come in either Friday evening or Saturday morning, and we'd go, but we would actually crawl over fences to get into somebody's lake. I don't know whether that was permitted or not, but he loved to swim, and so lakes was a lot of fun.
And that was, your church was in downtown Orlando?
Yes, First Christian Church, downtown Orlando, until Orlando started growing, and then they moved out to Cayley Street. It's still, the building is still there. And I got to go back about 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And my dad helped build that building. He was a block mason. He built a lot of Orlando, a lot of subdivisions. He built some of Disney. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's what I always say, my claim to fame is I was there before Disney. I was there before Mickey came.
I can remember as a child going to Orlando, and, you know, it was beautiful then as well. Mike, you were talking about attending college, and that's where how did the two of you meet? Or should we ask Jan that story?
I think that would be better for Jan. She has a better story of it.
Well, we both were older students. I was 21 as a freshman. I didn't go to college right away. I actually visited Gainesville's campus and had thought about going to Gainesville. I did do some community college. But I just was working, and a singing group came from the Bible college to my church. And to make that long story short, I went forward, dedicated my life. I wanted to be a teacher. So they had an education program there, so I decided to go. And Mike had been, as he mentioned, several different colleges. He was a lifeguard, and about 8 years in his hometown.
8 years, yeah.
And a youth minister asked him to be the lifeguard at the camp, and got a hold of Mike and convinced him he needed to go to Bible college, and Mike did want to be a teacher also. And so we both were in orientation at the same time, and I noticed him right away. And I even was in a class with him and sat behind him in class and was doing, dropped my books, and he wasn't paying any attention to me at all. Then I noticed he was with somebody. And so the story for Mike was he was going to go to a different Bible college, but his fiance was going to Cincinnati. So he actually, and then when I realized he was engaged, I, of course, started paying attention to other guys. But she, of course, decided she didn't want to marry him. And actually, as the story goes, he dated every other female on campus before me. And at a Bible college, there aren't that many girls anyway. And he even asked my sister out before he asked me out. My younger sister was there too. But we finally got together thanks to my best friend. She got him to ask me out.
And don't forget your Porsche jacket.
Yes, I also had a Porsche jacket. I had worked at a car dealership, and he noticed my jacket. And that's his first memory of me, is I had a Porsche racing jacket on. But the rest is history. We fell in love, and we both were teachers. Most of our careers have been, I was a preschool teacher, and Mike was high school. I say I loved him in, and he kicked him out.
That covered a lot of years of people's education.
It did.
Yeah.
And you had children. You have children.
Yes, we have a son, David. He lives in Kentucky with his wife, and he has a daughter. We have only one granddaughter, and our daughter has 4 boys. So we have 4 grandsons. And our oldest grandson has just had a baby, so we have our first grandbaby.
Wonderful.
And
That's
I'm
a great
sorry I didn't say Natalie's name. She's 40. She'll kill me. She's 41.
Mike, would you share with us how you really came to faith?
Well, I always like to tell the story that when I was 12 years old, I was baptized. And when I was 12 years old and 1 week from being baptized, I probably could cuss like the best sailors around. But there was always that aspect of, God and what He can do for you. You go through your teenage years, and those are kind of tough. And we kind of got away from it because it just didn't look like, what I wanted to do. I didn't see it in athletics as much or any of the other things that I was with until this one minister at a church camp caught me and said, I see that you like to swim and dive and you've done other things. Yeah. Would you come with me and we'll put on a program and we'll show and then talk about Christ and what He's done for you? Well, I had never done anything like that. And of course, we go to another town and don't know anybody there. And so I get up and I have to give my witness at that point. And it was from that point on, I knew that there was something that I needed to do. We formed a little group at that church camp called the Fellowship of the Unashamed, and we all wanted to do some sort of Christian work, whether the girls wanted to go into teaching or the guys wanted to go into preaching or ministry in some sort. And all of us have done something. I just haven't kept up with the rest of them. So it was quite an influence. And then when we get to Bible college, of course, like Jan said, she'd dropped the books and all of that. And she's been my rock. After we finally got together, she's really been my rock.
Jan, in hearing him say that, you talked about growing up and always being in church. Was there a time that you knew faith was your faith and you had been called to?
Yeah, I think it's a similar story that Mike said. I was baptized around 11 and was serving the Lord as I thought. In fact, I started teaching as soon as they'd let me. I think it was 13 when they let me start teaching a class. And I loved it, and I knew that was something I really wanted to do. But I was getting away from the Lord. After I graduated from high school, most of my friends were either married or gone to college. And I just I started working, and most of the people I worked with weren't Christians, and I wanted to fit in, so I'm not real proud of those years. I didn't kill anybody or anything, but I wasn't really devoted to the Lord. And I said this singing group came from the Bible college, and the last night they were there, the invitation happened, and I went forward. And I dedicated my life to Christian service. But I want to tell the story. I haven't told it so much except these last few years. When I was standing there and we were singing the invitation, somebody pushed me. And so I went forward, and I wanted to do it, but I needed that push, But when I got up front and turned around and looked to where I was sitting, there wasn't anybody behind me. So I truly believe that was God prompting me to make that decision, because it did change my life. And I did become more devoted. Every school I taught at was a Christian private school. I had the privilege of teaching Bible to 3- and 4-year-old children. In fact, one of my 3-year-olds, his mother came to me and said that he told her he was going to be a minister. He was 3 years old. And she said, I just want you to know that your influence on him, the Bible stories, he just was so much in love with it. And we had a dress-up day, and kids would come in as Superman or whatever, He came in a suit and tie, and I thought he was like his daddy, an executive, He said, no, I'm a preacher. And I don't really know the end of the story, but I do know he was very active in his church the few years that I knew him. But I do believe that that was my turning point, was I got pushed into it.
The nudge of the Lord.
The nudge
Nudge
of
of
the
the
Lord.
Lord. That's it.
You met in college, and how long after you met did you get married?
We're only laughing because Mike had to ask me twice to marry him. Daddy, he was sending 2 girls to college, and he said the only reason the girls went to college were to get their MRS degree. And so I was just in my first year, my freshman year. And so when Mike asked me to marry him, I said maybe, because I really felt like I needed to finish school so that Daddy wouldn't be right. And so he wasn't happy with that. So
No.
being from southern Indiana, he took me to he took me there too, but Spring Mill,
Spring Mill.
which had Donaldson Cave. And you can't go in the cave anymore now, I don't think.
No,
but
there's the bats are diseased.
he loved climbing the cliffs, and he loved going in caves, and he was so excited about going, and he took me in the cave and turned the light off and said, "Okay, I'm going to ask you again. Are you going to marry me?" And he said, "If you don't say yes, I'm not turning the light back on." And I'd never been in a cave before. He didn't leave me, but I couldn't see anything. So I said, yes. So we got married the next year, which was 1973. So we'll be married 48 years this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
When did you leave? What year did you leave college?
74,
74.
75.
Yeah, and then I came back. We came back to Florida, and I worked as a automotive technician, mechanic. Come on, but I worked for several dealerships with Nissan. Well, at that time it was Datsun, but now it's Nissan. Got to be a charter technician with Isuzu, and worked around all kinds of vehicles. But later on, just knew that there wasn't any security with it. You would have to get into really big corporations. And I probably could have, but I didn't. That wasn't my desire. So we went back to school. We went to East Tennessee, to Milligan. And I wanted to go to graduate school right away. And they said, no, you've got to have an undergraduate degree. And I went, oh, doggone it. So went ahead and got that. I got it in elementary education and Bible, and then went across the street to Emmanuel and got 60 hours towards a Master of Divinity degree in Christian education. And then we left there in 87 and started teaching in Christian private school. And then I got into public education. I taught elementary, middle school, and ended up teaching in high school. Mathematics was the key to it all. And it was
coaching.
Oh yeah, I did some coaching too, some football and basketball, 1 year of track because I didn't have anybody else, but really enjoyed it. I mean, if you want to talk about a mission field, public education is a large mission field right now. There's not much going on. They need good Christian teachers. They need someone there that can help them through those years. The teenage years are not easy. Teenagers are going to be teenagers, but they need help to face the situations in the world that we have today. And coaching was a good way of doing that too, because here you have to depend on, in football, 11 other guys and the rest of the team. In basketball, it was 4 other guys and yourself and the rest of the team to do the best that you can do. And you begin to understand personalities and where people are coming from. And I'll say it this way, it was a salvation for me, because I got to meet many Christians in the realm of athletics, but it also really helped out a lot in the rest of life.
Would you share with us a story about somebody you've taught and what it meant to you and to that person?
Well, there was one player that I had. He was a freshman, and we had just started a new school in West Pasco, J.W. Mitchell High School, and his mother was on the school board, and he had tried out for the team. And the night before the very first game that they're going to play, or the afternoon, he's out playing basketball in a gym class and breaks his wrist. And, he comes up to me and says, "I'm very sorry, I can't play tonight, I broke my wrist," and all this. But through just the encouragement of saying, "Well, you can get better and things will work out, just keep in shape and work with it." He later became very involved. So after, in January, his wrist had healed enough that he could play with us again, and he became one of my starters. And then he wrote me a letter his senior year that the things that I had said and done made such an influence on him that he wanted to do something with education and to help people. And he mentioned that God had shown him a way that way. And I have his letter on the wall. So,
all the paychecks are not the same as something like that, are they?
No. You get paid for doing something that you love, and so you're not really being paid that. Your paycheck is in seeing someone excel at what they can do.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell us the story of how you came to know about the village and to come here? Because you fairly recently moved here in November, is that right? December.
Right. We've only been here 2 months, and I want to put a little barb in here that it's your fault that we're here. We started doing research after Mike's dad passed away, and both of our parents, we saw that they weren't able to make some decisions later in life when their health deteriorated. And so we decided that we were already living in an adult community, but we decided we wanted to look for a retirement village that offered continuum care. And that was very important to us. We wanted to make the decisions. We didn't want our children to have to do that for us or I'm not even saying that it was a burden for anything that we did for any of our parents. We loved our parents and we did what we could, but we wanted to make the decisions ourselves. So we started doing research, and we narrowed it down to 3. That's always been our thing. If you want a plumber, we look into 3 different plumbers, and then we pick the best wood. And so we did our research, and we just kept coming back to Advent Christian Village, and we found the promo about it on a video on YouTube. And then we found out there were these porch conversations. And we couldn't get enough of them. We just kept watching them, and we just feel so blessed because almost everyone we watched, there was an affirmation for us. Either someone was talking about the same thing I just said, they didn't want their children to go through that, or how they found it, they knew somebody. But everything after that, every step out of that, I'll just give one example. To move here, we needed to get a mortgage. And so to start that process, we needed homeowners insurance. So we went to our agent back in Dade City, that's where we were living. And I told him where we were going to go and what we would need and everything. And he said, "My mom's from Mayo." And he said, "I know about the village. I knew somebody that lived there." He said, "You're going to love it there." And when he got all the information about our house on Elmwood that we were buying, he wrote back in another email, "Is there one nearby that might be up for sale too? I love the neighborhood." But that was just another affirmation because we actually don't know anybody here. But everyone that we've met has been so helpful, and we don't feel just welcome as a new member. We feel like family.
Well, I'm glad that the many people that you've seen talking about Advent Christian Village helped bring you here.
Yes.
And they'll look forward to meeting you too now.
Okay.
Or somebody that's going to watch this in a few weeks may be making a decision or considering.
Absolutely.
Sounds great.
Tell us what some of the things you want to do now that you're getting settled in your new home. What are the things on your bucket list? Or
Besides finishing unpacking?
yes.
That'll take 3 years. Well, I think one of the things I got involved with was the little RC cars. And I would like to show that you can be competitive. And I guess that's the coaching and the player in me. But you can be competitive and be a Christian with it. And there are a lot of men that get involved in sports, but this is something that you can have fun with. And I enjoy playing golf too, so I'll get with something with that. But those are some of the things, just being able to serve. I think one of the things we talked about too was having been a math teacher, and I have some little math magic tricks that I could help some of the kids with.
And some of us older folks too. I learned some things from Mike that I didn't know about math, but that's a broad field.
Yeah, but that's basically on my bucket list. Somehow I could serve, and that's what I want to do.
Jan, what about you?
I think the same, and obviously centered around children as well. The smaller they are, the more I like them. I don't do babies though, but I love toddlers that age, and so I know that there might be an opportunity here in the village to do that. I love storytelling. That's one of my favorite parts of teaching. And otherwise, I think we're both open to wherever God leads us to serve, but we do want to continue, as long as we can, to continue serving Him in whatever we do.
I have one other question for you. What advice would each of you give a young person today?
I think the main thing that I would tell them is that you've got to balance who you are and being a Christian. God has got to be on the one side of the scale, and who you are and the things that you do has got to be on the other, and it's got to be balanced out. God has got to be a part of it. If any one thing goes too much, you'll be tilted and be jilted and all of that. But just, look for where other people are being in Christ and in God. I saw it in the classroom, and you can see it wherever.
Jan?
For me, the best advice I was ever given was from my grandmother. When in doubt, don't. And that has served me well through my years.
I think that's a great way to wrap up this time, but there'll be more conversations. So please tune in again, and hopefully you'll get to meet Mike and Jan someday soon.